There is an animal alive in the world tonight that is larger than any creature that has ever existed. Not the largest alive today, the largest that has ever lived, in the entire 4 billion year history of life on this planet. Larger than any dinosaur that ever shook the ground. And it is not a fossil, not gone, not a story. It is alive right now, this very night, moving slowly through the dark water of the open ocean, breathing under the same stars as you, and almost no one has ever truly seen it. The largest life that has ever existed, and one of the least seen. It is the blue whale. Its heart alone is the size of a small car. Its tongue weighs about as much as an entire elephant. It can grow longer than 3 buses parked end to end, and weigh more than an airliner. And when it breathes out at the surface, the warm mist from its lungs rises higher than a 3-story house. We are not describing a monster from a story. We are describing the gentlest of giants, alive in the world at this very moment. And it raises a question so simple that children ask it, and so deep that it took us centuries to answer. Why is it so large? And why, in all the long history of life, has nothing ever grown larger? Why should the biggest living thing of all time be here, now, in the sea, and not some monster of the deep past? Tonight, slowly, we are going to understand the answer. We will feel the size, and how such a body can exist at all. We will see why only the sea could ever allow it, and how the largest creature alive feeds on some of the smallest. We will hear its great voice carry across the ocean, including one voice, out in the dark, that did not match the others, and follow it down on its long, slow dives. And we will come, near the end, to the quiet answer at the heart of it all. Why nothing will ever be larger than the blue whale. So let your breathing slow, and your body grow heavy and still. There is nothing to do now but listen, and drift out, gently, onto the wide, dark water where the great whales move, the largest life that has ever existed, and one of the least seen, with nothing in it, anywhere, to fear. Let's begin. Let us begin, as we should, with the sheer size of the thing, because the size is the first wonder, and the doorway to all the others. It is one matter to be told a number, and another to truly feel it. And the blue whale defeats our sense of scale so completely that even the people who study them, who have spent their whole lives near them, describe the same thing, that you cannot really hold the size of a blue whale in your mind, even while you are looking at one. The animal is simply too large for the eye to take in at close range. From a small boat alongside one, you do not see a whale. You see a portion of a whale, a vast, smooth flank sliding past, going on, far longer than you keep expecting it to, until at last the great tail rises and you realize how much of the animal was beneath you the whole time, unseen. So let us build the size up slowly, piece by piece, and let each piece settle before we add the next. Begin with the length. A large blue whale can reach close to 30 meters from the tip of its snout to the notch of its tail. Lay that length along a city street and it would stretch nearly the width of the whole street and the pavements on both sides. Stand 3 large school buses end to end, and the whale would be longer still. It is longer than the distance most people can throw anything, longer than a tennis court, longer, nose to tail, than the height of a 9-story building laid on its side, and it moves all of that length through the water with a single slow sweep of its tail, with an ease and a grace that makes the size seem almost weightless, which, in the water, it nearly is. Now add the weight. A big blue whale can weigh something like 150 tons. It is hard to attach any feeling to a number like that. So translate it. It is the weight of about 30 elephants, gathered into a single body. It is the weight of roughly 2,000 grown human beings, a small town's worth of people, all at once. It is heavier than a fully loaded passenger jet, and yet this immense weight is not lumbering or clumsy. Held up on every side by the water, the whale carries it as lightly as you carry yourself in a warm bath, and moves it through the sea with long, slow, unhurried strokes, traveling thousands of kilometers across the open ocean on the patient rhythm of that single great tail. Now go inward, to the heart. The heart of a blue whale is the largest heart that has ever beaten in any creature, ever, in the history of life. It is roughly the size of a small car. It weighs more than a grown adult human being, and it beats slowly, astonishingly slowly, for such a vast engine. When the whale is resting at the surface, its heart may beat only a handful of times each minute, and when it dives deep and slows its body to save oxygen, that great heart can drop to just a few beats per minute, each single beat sending a surge of blood through vessels so wide that, as people love to say, a small child could very nearly crawl through the largest of them. Picture that slow, enormous heartbeat now, Somewhere out in the dark beside you, one vast, deep, unhurried thud, and then a long quiet pause, and then another, the slowest, largest heartbeat in the world. Let your own settle toward its rhythm as you lie there, and the rest of the body matches the heart. The tongue of a blue whale, by itself, can weigh as much as an entire elephant, a single muscle, heavier than the largest animal that walks on land. Its lungs hold enough air to fill a small room, and it empties and refills them in that one great explosive breath at the surface, exchanging the air in its whole body in a couple of seconds. The blast of that breath leaves its blowhole at the speed of a storm wind. The spout of warm, misted breath rises 9 meters or more into the air, as tall as a 3-story house, and on a still day, it hangs there, a faint white column, long enough that sailors have spotted whales from far off simply by the breath standing on the horizon. Even the blood within the animal is vast, many thousands of liters of it, more than you could carry away in a fleet of barrels, moving in slow tides around that enormous frame. Let all of that settle, slowly, before we go on. The length of a building, the weight of a small town of people, a heart the size of a car, beating a few slow times a minute, a tongue as heavy as an elephant, lungs like a room full of air, emptied in a single sigh. This is not a creature built to the scale of our ordinary world. It is built to the scale of the open ocean, and only the open ocean, as we will see, could ever have made it, or could ever hold it up. And here is perhaps the most astonishing thing about the size of a blue whale, the thing that is easiest to say and hardest to truly believe. It does not begin large and grow slowly, the way we imagine great things must. It begins enormous. A blue whale calf, at the moment it is born, is already one of the largest animals on the entire planet. A newborn blue whale is around 7 meters long, longer than most cars, longer than most rooms, and weighs as much as a couple of tons, more than a small herd of horses, on the very first day of its life. It is born already larger than almost any creature it will ever meet that is not its own kind. And then it grows at a speed that is difficult to credit. Fed on its mother's milk, which is so rich and thick it has been compared to a paste, the calf can gain as much as 90 kilograms a day. 90 kilograms, the weight of a grown man added to its body every single day, for months. It grows by the weight of a person a day. By the time it is weaned, it has nearly doubled in length. There is no faster growth anywhere in the animal kingdom. The largest animal that has ever lived is also, at the start, the fastest growing a creature that arrives in the world already gigantic, and then becomes more gigantic still, day after day, on nothing but the milk of its mother, out in the open sea. Picture that gently as you drift. A newborn whale already the size of a bus, swimming close beside its mother in the warm blue water, rising with her to breathe, sinking with her to rest, growing, quietly and ceaselessly, by the weight of a grown person every day, in the wide, calm ocean, with no hurry at all, under the patient turning of the sea. There is no hurry in the deep. Let your breathing slow a little further. We have only just begun to take the measure of this animal, and already the world feels larger and stranger and gentler than it did before. Now, a question may have begun to form, quietly, beneath all these numbers. How is such a thing even possible? How can any living creature grow so large? On land, we know, there is a limit. The largest land animals that have ever lived, the great long-necked dinosaurs, the largest creatures ever to walk the earth, were giants. Yes, but even they were only a fraction of the weight of a blue whale. And the largest land animal alive today, the elephant, would be dwarfed many times over. Something about the land seems to hold a limit on size, and something about the sea seems to lift that limit away. To understand the blue whale, we have to understand that one simple, profound fact, and it is the first piece of the answer to our riddle, the question of why nothing has ever grown bigger. The answer is buoyancy, the gentle, lifting embrace of the water itself. Think of how it feels to lie back and float in calm water. The weight that you carry all day on land, the weight that tires your legs, that you feel in your feet and your spine, the steady downward pull of the earth simply lifts away. In the water you are held. You are supported, softly, on every side at once, and your own weight becomes almost nothing. You can lie back and breathe and let go, and the water carries you. This is not an illusion. The water truly bears your weight, pushing up on every part of you, holding you against the pull of gravity that, on land, your bones and muscles must fight against every moment of your life. Now imagine being born into that lifting embrace and living your whole life within it, never once leaving it. This is the life of the whale. A blue whale never has to hold up its own weight. It never has to fight gravity at all. The water bears the whole of that 150 tons, softly, completely, from every direction, every moment of its life. And this changes everything about how large a body can become. On land, a body that grew too large would eventually be crushed by its own weight. Its legs would have to become impossibly thick, its bones impossibly heavy, just to hold it up, until at some point the whole structure simply could not support itself. And that is the invisible ceiling that has always limited the size of land animals. But in the water, that ceiling lifts away. Freed from the need to carry its own weight, a body can keep growing and growing, far past anything the land could ever allow. The sea does not merely permit great size. The sea is the one place in all the world where such size is even possible. The blue whale is not a land animal that happens to live in the sea. It is a creature of the water through and through, a body that could exist nowhere else, held up and made possible by the gentle, ceaseless, lifting embrace of the ocean. There is something worth resting in there as you lie in the dark. The largest creature that has ever lived is also, in a sense, the most completely held. Every moment of its life, from its first breath to its last, it is carried supported softly on every side, weightless, cradled by the whole vast body of the sea. It never strains. It never has to hold itself up. It simply drifts and breathes and is borne along by the water, as gently as you are born. Tonight, by your own bed and the quiet dark around you, you and the great whale are both, in this moment, held. Let yourself feel it, the soft, complete support beneath you and around you, and let go into it, the way the whale lets go into the sea. The ancestors of the blue whale, long ago, did not always live this way. And this is one of the quiet wonders hidden in the story of the whale, that it was not always a creature of the sea at all. Tens of millions of years ago, the ancestors of all the great whales walked on land, on four legs, at the edges of ancient shores. They were not large. They were modest, hoofed, deer-like or dog-like creatures that waded in shallow water to feed, and over immense stretches of time, far longer than our minds can easily hold, they returned, generation by generation, to the sea. Their legs slowly became fins and flukes. Their bodies lengthened and smoothed. Their nostrils migrated to the tops of their heads to become the blowhole, so they could breathe at the surface without lifting their faces from the water. And freed at last from gravity, held up by the water, their descendants were able to do what no land creature ever could, to grow, across the ages, into the largest animals the world has ever known. Even now, hidden inside the front fins of a blue whale, beneath the skin, are the bones of a hand, 5 long fingers, the same bones as in your own hand, a quiet memory of the time, long ago, when its ancestors walked on the land under the same sky as ours. Hold that gently as you drift. The greatest creature of the sea carries, hidden in its fin, the bones of a hand, a small, secret reminder that it came, as we did, from the land, and chose, across millions of patient years, to return to the water, and there became something the land could never hold. And the body it became is a marvel of quiet engineering, shaped entirely by the sea. The blue whale is long and smooth and tapered, the shape that moves through water with the least resistance, the shape that shipbuilders and engineers have spent centuries trying to copy. Its skin is smooth and faintly mottled, blue-gray above and paler below, so that from beneath it blends with the bright surface and from above with the dark depths. It has no hind legs at all now, only the great horizontal tail, the flukes that drive it forward with slow, powerful, economical strokes. It has 2 long, slender front flippers for steering, and along its throat, from chin to navel, run dozens of deep parallel grooves, long pleats in the skin that can expand enormously, and those pleats are the key to how this giant feeds, which is a wonder all its own, and the next place our slow journey will take us. But before we go there, let your breathing slow once more. We have learned the size of the whale, and why the sea alone could make it, and where, long ago, it came from. We have a long, gentle night ahead of us still, and there is no hurry in any of it. The whale is in no hurry. The sea is in no hurry. Let yourself sink a little deeper into the quiet, and we will go on. So let us turn to the question of how the largest animal that has ever lived feeds itself, because the answer is one of the strangest and most beautiful in all of nature, and it overturns everything you might expect. When we imagine a giant predator, we imagine giant prey. We picture great teeth and a great hunt, and some other large creature seized and overcome. It seems only logical. Surely the biggest animal in the world must eat big things. And the truth is the exact opposite. The blue whale, the largest creature that has ever existed, feeds almost entirely on one of the smallest animals in the sea, on tiny, shrimp-like creatures called krill, each one no longer than your finger, most of them smaller. The greatest body the world has ever produced is built and fueled and sustained on some of the tiniest morsels the ocean has to offer. It is as though the largest building on Earth had been raised entirely out of grains of sand. How can that possibly work? How can 150 tons of whale be fed on creatures the size of your fingertip? The answer lies in numbers, and in one of the most remarkable feeding methods ever evolved. Krill are small, but they are not rare. In the cold, rich waters where blue whales feed, krill gather in swarms of almost unimaginable density, vast living clouds of them, drifting in the water, sometimes stretching for hundreds of meters, so thick that the water itself turns pink or red with their numbers. A single one of these swarms can contain many millions of krill, many tons of living food, all gathered together in one slowly drifting mass in the cold blue water. The krill themselves feed on even smaller things, on the tiny drifting plants of the sunlit sea. The same microscopic life that, as the sea blooms in the long days of summer, turns whole stretches of ocean green. So the sunlight falls on the water, the tiny plants catch it and multiply, the krill swarm and feed on the plants, and the whale, in turn, feeds on the krill. The largest animal in the world is, at the end of that short and elegant chain, eating sunlight gathered by the smallest life in the sea and passed up, in just 2 steps, into the greatest body the sea has ever made. And the way the whale gathers that food is a feat of engineering on a scale nothing else on Earth can match. Remember those long pleats running along the whale's throat, from chin to belly. When a blue whale finds a swarm of krill, it does something astonishing. It accelerates toward the swarm, opens its enormous mouth to an angle of nearly 90 degrees, and engulfs not just the krill but a colossal volume of water all around them. And as it does, those pleated grooves along its throat balloon outward, stretching and expanding until the whole front of the animal swells into a vast pouch, taking in a volume of water that can be greater than the whale's own body. In a single gulp, a blue whale can take into its mouth more water and more krill than seems possible, the largest single mouthful taken by any animal that has ever lived. It is, quite literally, the biggest bite in the history of the world. And then comes the second half of the marvel. The whale now has an enormous mouthful of water with the krill suspended in it, and it must somehow keep the food and let the water go. It does this with baleen. In place of teeth, the blue whale has hundreds of long plates of baleen hanging down from its upper jaw plates made of the same material as your fingernails, fringed along their inner edges into a dense, hair-like mat. The whale closes its mouth, and with its great tongue it pushes the water forward and out, through the baleen, and the baleen acts as a giant sieve, a living filter, letting all that water stream back out into the sea while catching the krill on the inside, trapped against the fringes. The water goes, the food stays, and then the whale swallows, and the krill, many kilograms of them in a single mouthful, pass down into the largest stomach in the world. Then the whale turns and accelerates and does it again, and again, and again. The scale of this feeding is difficult to grasp. In the rich days of summer, in the cold waters where the krill swarm thickest, a single blue whale may eat several tons of krill in a single day, millions upon millions of the tiny creatures, gathered mouthful by enormous mouthful out of the cold water. It is among the largest transfers of life and energy anywhere on the planet. The smallest creatures of the sea, gathered by the countless billion, passing up into the greatest body the sea has ever made. All day, every day, through the long bright weeks of the polar summer, until the whale has built up the deep reserves of energy it will need to carry it through the leaner months and the long migrations ahead. There is a strange and lovely gentleness in this, when you sit with it. The largest, most powerful animal in the world is not a hunter in the way we usually mean. It does not chase down other great creatures. It does not kill anything that could be said to struggle. It moves, slowly and peacefully, through clouds of tiny drifting krill, and opens its great mouth, and takes them in, and lets the sea pour back out through the sieve of its baleen, and swallows, and moves on. It is the most enormous predator that has ever lived, and also one of the gentlest feeders, a giant grazing on the smallest life in the sea, harming nothing that could fear it, taking only the tiny, countless, drifting things that the sunlit ocean produces in such endless abundance. There is no violence in it. There is only the slow, patient gathering of small things into a great life. Let that image carry you for a while. the vast dark shape rising through a glowing cloud of krill in the cold blue water, the great mouth opening, the slow swelling of the pleated throat, the sea pouring back out through the baleen in a bright stream, and the whale turning, unhurried, to gather another mouthful of the sea's smallest gifts. No struggle, no fear, only the largest life in the world, feeding gently on the smallest, in the cold, rich water, under the long light of the polar day. Breathe slowly. There is no hurry in the deep. The whale has all the long summer to feed, and we have all the long night to drift, and neither of us needs to rush at all. Let us stay a little longer with the feeding, because the way the largest animal on Earth gathers its food is one of the most extraordinary things in all of nature, and it explains a great deal about the whale itself. A blue whale does not hunt in the way we usually imagine hunting. It does not chase, it engulfs. When it finds a dense cloud of krill, those small, shrimp-like creatures it lives on, it accelerates toward them, opens its enormous mouth to an angle that seems impossible, and takes in a vast gulp of water, krill and all. And here is the wonder of its body's design. Along the whole underside of the whale, from chin to navel, the skin is pleated into deep grooves, like the folds of an accordion. And when the whale takes its great mouthful, those pleats unfurl and balloon outward, so that the throat swells into an enormous pouch, holding a volume of water that can be greater than the whale's entire body. In a single open-mouthed lunge, the largest creature on Earth swallows a small sea. Then comes the second half of the act. The whale closes its mouth on that swollen pouch of water and slowly squeezes. The water is pushed out, but the krill cannot follow it, because hanging from the whale's upper jaw, in place of teeth, are great curtains of baleen, hundreds of fringed plates, made of the same material as your fingernails, forming a living sieve. The water streams out through the baleen, the krill are caught against it, and with a sweep of its enormous tongue, the whale gathers them in and swallows. A mouthful of the ocean, strained down to a mouthful of food. It is a magnificent way to eat, but it comes with a strict condition, and that condition shapes the whole life of the whale. A lunge of that size costs an enormous amount of energy. The whale must accelerate its whole vast body, and then drag open that great water-filled pouch against the sea. It is only worth doing if the reward is large enough. If the krill are gathered thickly enough, in clouds dense enough, that one gulp brings in far more energy than the lunge spent. In thin, scattered krill, a blue whale would starve, working harder with each lunge than it could ever gain. And so the greatest animal that has ever lived is bound, utterly, to those few rich corners of the sea where the smallest creatures swarm in their countless millions. Hold that thought gently as you drift. We will return to it, near the end of the night, when we ask at last why nothing will ever grow larger than this. And now, as you lie there in the dark, let us turn to the sound, because the blue whale, the largest of all animals, also makes the largest of all sounds, and its voice is one of the strangest and most moving wonders in the whole of the natural world. We tend to think of the deep ocean as a place of silence. It is anything but. Sound travels through water far better than it travels through air, faster, and much farther, and the deep sea is filled with it. The calls and clicks and songs of countless creatures, carrying through the water across distances that would be impossible in the air. And of all the voices in all the sea, the voice of the blue whale is the greatest. The sounds a blue whale makes are the loudest sounds produced by any animal on Earth. Louder than a jet engine at takeoff, louder than almost anything in the natural world. If you were near one in the water, as it called, you would not so much hear the sound as feel it, a pressure, a vibration, passing through your whole body, through your chest and your bones, as much a physical force as a sound. But the true wonder of the blue whale's voice is not only its loudness, it is its reach. The calls of the blue whale are pitched extraordinarily low, so low that much of the sound lies at the very bottom edge of what a human ear can hear. And some of it falls below that edge entirely, into the deep infrasound that we cannot hear at all but can only measure. And these low, low sounds have a remarkable property. The lower a sound is pitched, the farther it can travel through the sea without fading away. The blue whale's voice is pitched so low and projected with such power that it can travel across staggering distances of open ocean, across hundreds, perhaps in the right conditions thousands, of kilometers of water. There are stretches of the deep ocean, layers of a certain temperature and pressure, that act almost like channels or pipes for sound, carrying these low calls along for enormous distances with very little loss. And into these channels, the blue whales send their voices. Think of what that means. Somewhere in the dark ocean tonight, A single blue whale lets out a long, low, powerful call, a sound too deep for you to hear, a pulse of pressure rolling out through the water in every direction, and that call travels. It rolls on through the black water, on and on, across the curve of the sea, past mountains and trenches it will never see, for hundreds of kilometers, and somewhere, impossibly far away, another blue whale, alone in its own patch of dark ocean, feels that call arrive, and knows that, somewhere out there, across all that distance, it is not alone. The blue whales may be the most far-flung speakers on the planet, calling to one another across whole ocean basins, holding a slow conversation spread across distances we can barely imagine, in voices too deep for us to hear. We do not fully understand what they are saying. This is one of the honest mysteries that remains. We know the males sing long, patterned, repeating songs, especially in the breeding season, and that these songs likely play some part in finding and attracting a mate in the way that birdsong does. We know that whales use simpler calls to keep in contact across distance, to find one another in the vastness. But the full meaning of it, what information passes in those long, low songs, what a whale knows when it hears another's voice roll in from across the sea, much of that is still beyond us. We are listening in on the largest conversation on the planet, carried in the deepest voices on the planet, and we have only begun to learn the language. There is something humbling and something wonderful in that. The greatest animals in the world are speaking to one another, across the whole width of the oceans, every night, and we are only just beginning to hear them. And here, in the great chorus of these deep, far-traveling voices, there is one story that is perhaps the strangest and most quietly moving of all the story we promised, far back at the start of the night, that we would come to. It is the story of a single whale, somewhere in the wide Pacific, who has been singing, for decades, in a voice that no other whale appears to share. For many years, listening stations in the deep ocean, instruments left in the water to record the sounds of the sea, picked up, again and again, a particular whale call at an unusual pitch. Most blue whales in that part of the world call at around 15 to 20 hertz, a deep low rumble near the bottom of our hearing. But this one voice called higher at around 52 hertz, still a deep low note to us, but distinctly, unmistakably higher than the calls of the blue whales around it. Year after year, season after season, the scientists tracked this single voice as it moved through the Pacific, calling its slightly too high call. It traveled alone. Its path never quite matched the migration of the ordinary blue whales, and as far as anyone could tell from the recordings, no other whale ever answered it in the same voice. It came to be called, gently and a little sadly, the loneliest whale in the world, a single creature, somewhere out there, singing for decades, in a pitch that seemed to be its own, calling and calling across the dark Pacific, in a voice that no other whale appeared to share. It is worth being honest and careful here, because the story is often told more sadly than the facts truly support, and we have no wish, on this channel, to add sorrow to your night, where the truth does not require it. We do not actually know that this whale was lonely, or even that it was alone. Whales of different kinds can hear one another's calls even at different pitches. It is quite possible that this whale was heard and understood and was not isolated at all, but simply sang in an unusual register, as a person might have an unusually high or low voice and still be perfectly well understood by everyone around them. We do not even know for certain what kind of whale it was. The loneliest whale may not have been lonely, but the image has stayed with people all the same, because there is something in it that touches us deeply. The thought of a single great voice, calling steadily across the vast dark water, year after year, faithful and patient, sending out its song into the night whether or not any answer ever comes. And perhaps that is the gentler way to hold it as you drift towards sleep. Not as a sad story, but as a faithful one. Somewhere out in the wide ocean, a great gentle creature has been singing, steadily, for decades, sending its long, low voice out into the dark, over and over, across hundreds of kilometers of black water, simply because that is what it is, and that is what it does. The song goes out into the night. Whether or not it is answered, it goes out, again and again, patient and unhurried and unafraid. There is a kind of quiet comfort in that. The sea is full of voices calling to one another in the dark, across distances we can barely imagine, and not one of them, however far it travels, is truly sent into nothing. The water carries them all. Let that low, far voice be there in the dark beside you now, as you settle deeper towards sleep. Too deep to hear, but they're all the same. a great slow song rolling out through the black water, on, across the whole width of the sea. There is no hurry in it. There is no fear in it. There is only the patient voice of the largest, gentlest creature in the world, singing softly through the night. Let us follow the whale now through the great rhythm of its year, and the long, slow shape of its life, for the blue whale is not only the largest of animals, but one of the longest lived and farthest traveling, and the pattern of its years is its own kind of wonder. A blue whale lives its life between two worlds, and spends much of that life traveling slowly between them. In the long days of summer, it journeys toward the cold waters near the poles, the chill, rich, productive seas where the sunlight of the endless polar day fuels vast blooms of tiny plants, and the krill swarm in their countless billions. This is where the whale feeds, gorging through the bright weeks, taking in tons of krill a day, laying down deep reserves of energy in its great body. And then, as the season turns and the polar light begins to fade, the whale turns and begins the long journey back toward the warmer waters, nearer the equator, the gentler, calmer, warmer seas where it will spend the other half of the year, where the females give birth and nurse their calves, and where there is far less food, so that the whale lives. Through these months, largely on the reserves it built up in the summer feeding grounds, these journeys are among the longest made by any animal on Earth. A blue whale may travel many thousands of kilometers between its summer feeding grounds and its winter waters, crossing whole oceans on the slow, steady, economical beat of its great tail, navigating across distances and through open water with a sureness we still do not fully understand. It does not hurry. A blue whale's ordinary traveling pace is a slow, patient cruise, unhurried and tireless, that carries it across the world not in a burst but over weeks and months of steady movement. Picture that long, slow voyage as you lie there, a great solitary creature, moving steadily through the open ocean, day after day, week after week, rising to breathe, sinking to glide, crossing thousands of kilometers of empty blue water on nothing but the slow rhythm of its tail and some deep, ancient sense of where it is going. There are few more peaceful images in all the natural world than a blue whale on its long migration, utterly unhurried, utterly at home, crossing the whole width of an ocean at the pace of a slow walk, in no hurry at all to arrive. And at the heart of this traveling life is the deepest bond the whale knows, the bond between a mother and her calf. We have already seen how a blue whale is born already enormous, 7 meters long and a couple of tons in weight, on the very first day. For its first year of life, that calf stays close by its mother's side, almost always within reach of her, swimming in the gentle slipstream alongside her great body, rising with her to breathe, sinking with her to rest. She nurses it on her extraordinarily rich milk so thick and fatty it has the consistency of a paste, far richer than the milk of any land animal. And on this the calf grows by that astonishing 90 kilograms a day, doubling in length in a matter of months. The mother gives enormously of herself in this. Through the long migration and the lean winter months, while she feeds little, she pours her own reserves into her calf, her own great body slowly giving up its stored energy to build the body of her young one. It is one of the most generous arrangements in nature, the largest mother in the world, quietly spending herself to raise the largest baby in the world, the two of them traveling together across the open sea. The small one, though small, hardly fits a creature the size of a bus, always close beside the great one. And the life that calf is beginning, if it is fortunate, will be a very long one. Blue whales are among the longest-lived animals on the planet. They commonly live to 80 or 90 years, a full human lifetime, and more, and there is good reason to think that some individuals may live past 100. There are ways of estimating a whale's age after its death, from layers that build up over the years in parts of its body, almost like the rings of a tree, and these methods suggest lifespans that rival or exceed our own. Think of what that means. A blue whale alive in the ocean tonight may have been born before you, or may have been crossing these same waters, singing these same low songs, for longer than you have been alive. It may go on crossing them for decades after this night is forgotten. These are not brief lives. They are long, slow, patient existences, measured out in decades of migration and feeding and song, in a creature that does almost nothing quickly and has all the time in the world. There is a deep calm in contemplating a life lived at that pace. The blue whale is in no hurry about anything. It grows slowly, after its first swift infancy. It travels slowly. It feeds in long, unhurried mouthfuls. It sings long, slow songs. It lives for the better part of a century, or more. Its whole existence runs at a tempo utterly unlike the quick, bright, hurried rhythm of our days on land, a tempo set not by clocks or schedules but by the turning of the seasons and the slow pulse of the sea. To imagine yourself into that rhythm, even for a night, is itself a kind of rest. There is nowhere the whale must be by any particular time. There is nothing it must rush to finish. There is only the long, slow journey across the open water, the rising to breathe, the sinking to glide, the patient crossing of the seasons, year upon unhurried year. Let your own sense of time loosen and slow, as you lie there, to something more like the whale's. The hurried clock of the day can be set down now. There is nothing you need to finish tonight, nowhere you need to be, no schedule the dark is keeping. There is only the slow rise and fall of your breath, like the slow rise and fall of the great whale at the surface, and the long, quiet night stretching ahead, with no hurry in it anywhere at all. Breathe in, slowly, like the whale rising to the surface. Breathe out, slowly, like its long, warm sigh into the night air, and let yourself drift on, at the whale's own pace, across the wide, dark water. Now let us follow the whale downward, away from the surface, and see what becomes of that great body when it leaves the air behind and slips into the deeper water. For the blue whale, though it must breathe air like us, is also a diver, and the way it manages the dive is a quiet marvel of the body. The blue whale, remember, is a mammal, as we are. It does not breathe water, as a fish does. It must come to the surface to fill its lungs with air, and it carries that air down with it when it dives, and it must return to the surface to breathe again. And yet it spends much of its life beneath the surface, gliding through the water in long, slow descents, holding a single breath for many minutes at a time, far longer than any human being could. How does it do this? How does a creature that breathes air manage to live so much of its life submerged? The answer lies in a whole suite of quiet adaptations, all of them aimed at one thing: making the most of every single breath. When a blue whale takes that one enormous breath at the surface, it does not simply fill its lungs and dive. It packs oxygen away throughout its whole body. Its blood is extraordinarily rich, dense with the cells that carry oxygen, far richer in this respect than ours. And its muscles are loaded with a special substance that stores oxygen directly in the flesh, holding great reserves of it ready for use, so much that the muscle of deep-diving whales is dark, almost black, with the amount of oxygen-binding material packed into it. The whale, in effect, carries its air supply not just in its lungs, but in its blood and its muscles too, distributed all through its body, a whole body store of oxygen drawn from that single great breath. And then, as it dives, it spends that oxygen with exquisite care. Remember the slow heart we spoke of, that great heart the size of a car? When the whale dives, that heart slows even further, dropping to just a few beats each minute, sometimes only 2, and the flow of blood is quietly directed away from the parts of the body that can do without it for a while, and reserved for the organs that must never be starved, the heart and the brain. The whale's body goes into a kind of deep, calm, oxygen-saving stillness. Its metabolism slows, its great heart beats long and slow and far apart, and on that single, carefully hoarded breath, the whale can glide downward and onward through the water for many minutes, slow and serene, before it must rise again to breathe. There is something deeply restful in picturing this, as you lie in the quiet dark, the great whale, far below the surface now, gliding slowly through the dim blue water, its enormous heart beating only once every 20 or 30 seconds, one slow, vast, deep pulse, and then a long, long pause, and then another. Everything in the animal slowed almost to stillness. No effort, no struggle, just the slow glide through the deepening water, and that immense, unhurried heartbeat, the slowest large heartbeat in all the world, marking out the long, calm minutes of the dive. Let your own heart, your own breath, settle toward that same deep slowness now. There is no hurry in the deep. The whale has all the time it needs on a single breath, and so, tonight, do you. Most of the blue whale's life is lived in the upper reaches of the sea, in the sunlit and twilight waters where the krill swarm and the light still reaches. It is not a creature of the crushing abyss. It lives nearer the surface, in the great open blue. But it shares the ocean, of course, with all the deeper world below the dark midwater, and the abyssal plains, and the trenches far beneath. And there is one quiet thread that ties the great whale, in the end, to the very deepest parts of the sea. And it is worth pausing on, gently, for it completes the circle of the whale's place in the world. When at last a blue whale dies, After its 80 or 90 or 100 years of slow migration and song, its great body sinks. Down it goes, slowly, through the sunlit water and into the twilight and then into the dark, falling for hours through the deepening blue, until at last it comes to rest on the floor of the deep sea, kilometers down, in the cold and the black. And there, in that lightless place where food is the rarest thing of all, the body of the whale becomes a gift beyond measure. A whole community of deep-sea creatures gathers to it, over months and years, scavengers, and then bone-eating worms, and whole small ecosystems of life that spring up around the fallen giant and live upon it for years, sometimes decades, slowly returning the great body to the living world of the deep. The largest life in the sea, at its ending, becomes the foundation of a small flourishing of new life in the darkest, hungriest place there is. Nothing is wasted. The great slow life of the whale, lived out for a century near the surface in the light, becomes at last a long, slow feast in the dark below, a final, quiet gift from the largest creature in the world to the smallest and most patient inhabitants of the deep. There is a wholeness in that worth carrying down towards sleep. The whale belongs to the whole ocean, top to bottom, light to dark. It feeds on the smallest creatures of the sunlit water. It sings to its own kind across the whole width of the sea. And at the last it sinks into the deepest dark and feeds, in its turn, the patient life of the abyss. Nothing about it is separate. It is woven, from the surface to the sea floor, into the one great living body of the ocean, and so, in a quieter way, are we all. Breathe slowly. Let yourself sink a little deeper into the dark. The whale is gliding far below now, on its single slow breath, its great heart beating once in the long quiet, and there is no hurry anywhere in the world. And there is a deeper wonder still in those dives, hidden inside the whale's own body, for to sink into the cold and the dark for long minutes at a time. Far from the air it must breathe, the whale does something quietly astonishing with the great engine of its heart. We marveled, at the start of the night, at that heart the size of a small car. At the surface, between dives, it beats steadily, driving the blood through that enormous body. But as the whale tips downward and begins to dive, something changes. The heart slows. It slows far more than you might think possible down, in the deepest part of a dive, to just a handful of beats each minute. A few slow, vast contractions, with long, still pauses between them, in a creature larger than anything that has ever lived. The blood is drawn inward, kept close to the heart and the brain, while the great muscles of the body run on a private store of oxygen they have been holding in reserve. Everything in the whale turns quiet and slow and economical, so that the breath taken at the surface can be stretched, gently, across the whole long descent and the long climb back. There is something deeply restful in imagining it, as you lie here in the dark, the largest heart in the world, beating perhaps twice in a minute, slow as a great bell tolling far off. The whole enormous body gliding downward through the blue-black water with almost no effort at all, holding its single breath, in no hurry whatever to return. And then, in its own slow time, the whale turns, and rises, and breaks the surface at last in that great warm rush of mist, one breath out, one breath in, and the heart quickens again, and the long, slow rhythm of the open sea resumes. Let your own breathing follow it down and up, gently. The slow sinking, the held stillness in the dark, the unhurried rising, the single deep breath at the top. There is no creature on earth that breathes more slowly, or more deeply, or with less haste, than the great whale moving through the night. There is a part of the blue whale's story that we should tell gently, but that we should not leave out, because it is part of what makes the animal so precious, and because, in the end, it is a story not of loss but of return. For most of human history, the blue whale lived almost entirely beyond our reach. It was simply too large, too fast, and too far out in the open ocean for early sailors to do it any harm. They would have glimpsed it, now and then, from their small wooden ships, the vast back rolling at the surface, the towering spout standing on the horizon, and they would have known it as the greatest of all the creatures of the sea, far too mighty to touch. And so, for thousands of years, the blue whales moved through the oceans of the world in enormous numbers, undisturbed, singing their long, low songs across waters that had never known a single threat from us. Then, within a relatively short stretch of more recent history, our ships and tools changed, and for a time the blue whale was within our reach, and its numbers fell. We will not dwell on this part, for there is no need to carry sorrow or alarm into your night, and that is not the spirit of this channel. It is enough to say, simply and honestly, that over a span of decades, the great blue whales, which had filled the oceans of the world, became rare, reduced to a small fraction of their former numbers, scattered thin across the seas that had once been full of their voices. The largest animal that had ever lived, after surviving for millions of years and outgrowing every other creature on Earth, came, for a little while, perilously close to vanishing from the world altogether. And then, and this is the turn in the story, the part worth holding on to, we stopped. As understanding grew, the nations of the world came together and agreed to protect the great whales, and the hunting of blue whales was brought to an end, and the ocean, given the chance, began, slowly, to heal. It is a slow healing, because the blue whale is a slow creature. It lives long, it grows up slowly. A mother raises only a single calf at a time and only every few years. Such an animal cannot recover quickly. But across the decades since they were protected, in more and more parts of the world, the blue whales have, quietly, begun to return. Their numbers are climbing again, slowly, in ocean after ocean. Their great spouts are being seen once more in waters where they had nearly disappeared. Their long, low songs are filling stretches of sea that had fallen silent. The largest creature that has ever lived is still here, still singing, still migrating, still raising its enormous calves in the warm winter waters, and, slowly, there are more of them with each passing decade. There is something quietly hopeful in that, and it is the right note to carry forward into the rest of the night. We came close to losing the greatest animal the world has ever produced, and then we chose, in time, not to. And because we chose differently, the blue whales are still out there tonight, breathing under the same stars as you, crossing the dark water on their slow migrations, singing across the whole width of the seas. The story of the blue whale is not, in the end, a sad one. It is a story of a creature so magnificent that, having nearly let it slip away, we found the wisdom to hold the door open, and the great gentle giants came back through it, slowly, patiently, in their own unhurried time, as they do everything. So when you picture the whale now, out there in the dark, picture it as part of a slowly growing number, no longer a last survivor, but one of a returning multitude, scattered across all the oceans of the world, their voices once again threading through the deep water from sea to sea. The largest life that has ever existed is still here, and there is more of it each year. Let that be a small warmth in the dark, as you drift. Let your breathing slow. There is no hurry, and no sorrow, in the deep tonight. Only the great, gentle creatures, returning in their own slow time to the waters that are their home. And now we come, at last, to the question we left open at the very beginning of the night, the quiet riddle we promised we would return to once we had learned enough to answer it. Why is the blue whale the largest creature that has ever lived? And why will nothing almost certainly ever be larger? Why does life, after 4 billion years of endless invention, seem to have reached the blue whale and stopped as though it had run up against some invisible ceiling and could go no higher? We have already found the first half of the answer. We know now why such great size is possible at all, because the sea lifts away the weight. We saw that on land, a body that grows too large is eventually defeated by its own weight, crushed by the pull of gravity that its bones and legs must forever fight. And we saw that in the water, held up softly on every side, freed from that downward pull, a body can grow far past anything the land could ever allow. The buoyancy of the sea lifts away the lower ceiling, the one that limits land animals, and lets life climb to sizes the land could never reach. That is why the largest creatures that have ever lived are all sea creatures, and the very largest of all is the blue whale. But that cannot be the whole story. For if the water simply removed all limits on size, then why stop at the blue whale? Why not a creature twice as large, or 10 times? If buoyancy lifts the ceiling away, what is it that keeps even the blue whale from growing larger still? There must be some other limit, some upper ceiling that even the open ocean cannot lift, and there is. In truth, there are several, and they all converge, remarkably, at about the size of a blue whale. To understand why nothing will ever be bigger, we have to see how they fit together. The first and deepest limit is food. We saw how the blue whale feeds those enormous lunges, the great mouth opening, the vast pouch of water and krill, the sieving of the sea through the baleen. It is a magnificent way to feed, but it is also a tremendously expensive one. Each great lunge cost the whale an enormous amount of energy, the effort of opening that vast mouth, of dragging all that water to a halt, of swelling the great pleated throat and then squeezing the sea back out. The whale spends a fortune of energy on every mouthful, And so the whole way of life only works, only pays for itself, when the krill are gathered thickly enough, when the swarms are dense enough that a single huge gulp brings in more energy than the gulp cost to take. The whale lives, in other words, on a narrow and beautiful balance. It must find krill packed densely enough that each enormous, costly mouthful more than pays for itself. Now see what that means for size. The larger the whale grows, the more food it needs simply to keep its great body running. But the krill swarms do not grow with it. There are only so many places in the ocean where krill gather thickly enough to feed a blue whale at all, and only for part of the year, and a swarm can only be so dense. And so, as a filter-feeding whale grows larger and larger, it eventually approaches a point where its body needs more energy than even the richest swarms of krill can reliably provide, a point where it can no longer be sure of gathering enough food to pay for the very size that lets it gather food. Beyond that point, greater size is no longer an advantage but a danger. A still larger whale would risk starving in the lean times, unable to find swarms rich enough to sustain it. And so the size of the blue whale appears to sit very near that ceiling, near the largest size at which a filter-feeding giant can still reliably feed itself from the krill the ocean provides. It is not that life could not build the body of a larger whale. It is that the ocean could not reliably feed one. The blue whale is, in a real sense, as large as the sea's own table will allow. The second limit lies within the body itself, in that great, slow heart. We marveled earlier at the heart the size of a car, beating its slow few beats a minute. But that heart, it turns out, is working very near the edge of what is possible. When scientists managed, with great patience, to measure the heartbeat of a blue whale through the whole cycle of a feeding dive, they found something striking. During the deep part of the dive, as we said, the heart slows almost to stopping just a couple of beats a minute. But then, when the whale surges upward in a great lunge to feed, and afterwards as it returns to the surface to breathe and recover, that heart must race to its very fastest, and even at its fastest, it can barely keep up with the enormous demands of the body. The blue whale's heart, it appears, is beating very near the upper limit of what a heart that large can do. A bigger whale would need an even larger heart, beating even faster to supply an even greater body, and there is simply no room left. The heart is already at the edge. The plumbing of the body, the great slow circulation that serves all that flesh, is near the limit of what such a system can sustain. Grow much larger, and the heart could no longer keep the body supplied. Here too, the blue whale sits right at the ceiling. And there is a third piece, having to do with breath and with time. The larger a diving animal grows, the more oxygen its great body demands. And though a bigger body can also store more oxygen, the balance does not improve forever. There comes a size at which the sums no longer favor growing larger, where a bigger body could not gather and store and spend its breath efficiently enough to live the diving, feeding, migrating life that a whale must live. Once again, a limit. Once again, the blue whale near its edge. So now you can see the shape of the answer. It is not one ceiling but several, and they all arrive, remarkably, at about the same place. The richness of the krill that the ocean can provide, the limits of a heart and a circulation straining at their utmost, the balance of breath and oxygen in a diving body, each of these, on its own, sets a rough upper limit on how large such a creature can be, and all of them together point to about the size of a blue whale. Life, given the lift of the open ocean and the strange gift of superabundant krill, climbed and climbed toward greater size across the ages, and arrived, at last, at the blue whale, and there found every one of these ceilings pressing down at once, and could climb no higher. The blue whale is not large by accident, and not large without limit. It is poised precisely at the meeting point of everything that makes great size possible, and everything that finally forbids it. It is, as nearly as we can tell, as large as a living thing can be, and it took a rare alignment of the whole world to make even this possible. The giant filter-feeding whales did not appear until a few million years ago, when changes in the oceans and the climate caused krill and other tiny creatures to gather, for the first time, in the dense, reliable, superabundant swarms that such feeding requires. Only then, when the sea's smallest creatures became plentiful enough to support it, could life make the leap to the blue whale's size. It required the lift of the water, and the invention of baleen, and the rise of the great krill swarms, and 100 other things besides, all aligned at once. Remove any one of them, and there is no blue whale. It is a creature balanced at the very summit of what life on this planet has ever achieved in size, and it sits there, almost certainly, alone, at a height nothing has reached before, and nothing is likely ever to reach again. There is a strange and beautiful stillness in that thought. The largest living thing that has ever existed, or as far as we can tell that ever can exist, is alive right now, tonight, in the dark water under the same stars as you, not in the deep past, not yet to come. Now, we happen to share our brief moment on this planet with the single greatest creature the 4 billion-year story of life has ever produced, the very topmost note the music of life has ever reached, and most of us will never see it, and it asks nothing of us, and it moves, gently and unhurried and unafraid, through the wide, dark water, singing its long, low song across the whole width of the sea. The largest life that has ever existed, and one of the least seen. That has been our thread all night, and now you know the truth of it, on both sides. You know why it is the largest. The lift of the water, the gift of the krill, the long climb of life to the very ceiling of what is possible. And you know, too, why it is so seldom seen, because it lives far out in the open ocean, scattered thin across the vast seas, rising only now and then to breathe before slipping back into the blue. The greatest creature in the history of the world, hidden in plain sight, in the one place large enough to hold it, the sea. Let that settle into you now, slowly, as the night deepens and you drift toward sleep. There is nothing left to wonder about tonight, nothing left to solve. The great question is answered, and the answer is as gentle as the animal itself. The blue whale is as large as life can be, and it is here, with us, now. We have learned the size of the whale, and how it feeds, and how it sings, and why nothing will ever be larger. But there is a gentler question still, one that is harder to answer and lovelier to wonder about as you drift toward sleep. What is it like to be a blue whale? What is the world like, from the inside of that great gentle body, moving through the dark water? We can never fully know, but we know enough to imagine our way a little into it, and the imagining is itself a kind of rest. Begin with the world the whale lives in, which is, above all, a world of sound. We are creatures of the eye. We build our whole sense of the world out of light, and we find it hard to imagine living any other way. But light does not travel far in the sea. Even in the clearest water, you can see only a few tens of meters. Beyond that, the world simply fades into blue, and then into dark. For an animal as vast as a blue whale, moving through an ocean that stretches for thousands of kilometers, sight is almost useless for knowing the wider world. Its eyes, set far back on either side of its great head, see well enough nearby, but they cannot show it the shape of the sea it lives in. And so the blue whale knows its world, above all, through sound, through the long, low calls that travel for hundreds of kilometers, through the songs of other whales rolling in from far away, through the texture of the sea's own noise. Where we would picture a map of the world drawn in light and color, the whale's sense of its world is something more like a vast, slow soundscape, an awareness, built of distant voices and echoes, of an ocean far too large to ever see. Try for a moment to imagine that. To lie in the dark as you are lying now and to know the world not by looking but by listening. To feel the space around you not as something seen but as something heard. The near and the far, the empty water and the distant company, all of it arriving as sound through the dark. The blue whale lives always in something like the state you are in now. Here in your darkened room with your eyes closed, a world known by sound and sense rather than sight. A world of darkness and distance and quiet far-off voices. There is no strain in it for the whale, and there need be none for you. The dark is not an absence. It is simply the medium the whale lives in, as naturally as we live in the light, a soft, sounding, spacious dark, full of far-off voices, in which the great creature moves with perfect ease. And within that body, behind that great head, is a large and complex brain. We must be honest and careful here, for the inner lives of whales are one of the places where wonder most easily outruns knowledge, and we will not pretend to know more than we do. We do not know that blue whales think as we think, or feel as we feel, and we should not simply assume it. But we do know some things. We know that the great whales have large brains, rich and folded. We know that whales as a group are long-lived, far-ranging, and in many species deeply social, with bonds between mothers and young that last for years, and in some kinds, and traditions and songs that are learned and passed between individuals, and that change over time, something not far from what we might call culture. Blue whales are less openly social than some of their relatives. They are often seen alone, or as a mother with her calf, scattered across the wide ocean rather than gathered in tight groups. But they come together at the great feeding grounds. They call and answer across enormous distances, and there is every reason to think that the long, low conversation they hold across the seas means something real to them, carries something we have not yet learned to read. What we can say, gently and truly, is this: that the blue whale is not a simple creature. It is a large-brained, long-lived, far-traveling animal that knows its world through a sense we can barely imagine, that speaks to others of its kind across distances that dwarf anything in our own experience, and that lives a slow, patient, decades-long life in the open sea. Whatever its inner world is like, it is surely rich, and surely strange to us, and surely worthy of the quiet respect we would give to any ancient and gentle thing. When you picture the whale now, do not picture an empty giant, a great machine of muscle and baleen moving mindlessly through the water. Picture a creature that is aware, that hears the far voices, that knows the long road of its migration, that has crossed the same waters for 50 or 80 years, that is, in its own slow and unknowable way, at home in the world, in a manner we can only begin to imagine. There is a particular tenderness in the bond between a mother whale and her calf that we can see clearly, even from the outside, and that may be the surest window we have into the whale's inner life. For a full year, that mother keeps her enormous calf close beside her, never far, attentive to it always. She positions her body to shelter it, to help it draft along in her slipstream so it need not work so hard to keep up. She rises gently with it to the surface to teach it, in effect, the rhythm of breathing. She pours her own body's reserves into it, day after day, through the lean months when she herself eats little, spending herself to build it up. There is no mistaking the care in it. Whatever else we cannot know about the mind of a whale, we can see, plainly, the patient devotion of a mother to her young, the largest mother in the world, watching over the largest baby in the world, the two of them moving together across the wide sea, bound by something that looks, from the outside, very much like love. Hold that as you drift. The great mother and her calf, moving slowly together through the warm blue water, never far apart. The small one always in the shelter of the large. There is no hurry in it, and no fear. There is only the patient closeness of the two of them, the largest gentle creatures in the world, keeping each other company across the wide and ancient sea. Let your breathing slow. Let the dark around you be the soft-sounding dark the whale lives in. There is nothing to see, and nothing you need to see. There is only the quiet, and the far voices, and the slow company of the great creatures moving through the night. There is one more part of the whale's story to tell, and though it begins in death, it is not, in the end, a sad one, for even when a blue whale's long life is over, its body becomes a gift to the deepest and hungriest part of the sea. When a great whale dies, and is not washed ashore, it sinks. Slowly, over hours, that vast body descends through the dark, down past the depth where light has long since failed, down to the cold, still floor of the deep ocean, a part of the world so poor in food that most of its creatures live on the barest scraps drifting down from far above. And onto that hungry plain there arrives, all at once, the single greatest meal it will ever know. Scientists have a name for it, a whale fall. And what follows is one of the strangest and most wonderful processes in all of nature. First come the scavengers of the deep, the hagfish, the sleeper sharks, the crabs drawn from far across the dark floor to the feast, stripping the great body slowly over months and years. Then, when the flesh is gone, a second wave moves in to live among the bones. Among them a creature found almost nowhere else, a soft, pale worm with no mouth and no gut, which sends root-like threads down into the bone itself to draw out the rich oils locked inside, and lives there, in its thousands, turning the skeleton into a garden. A single whale fall can feed a whole small world of creatures on the deep-sea floor for decades, an entire community that exists, in some cases, only because a great whale came down out of the dark to feed them. There is a deep and gentle wholeness in that, worth resting on as the night grows late. The largest creature that has ever lived spends its life eating some of the smallest, and then, at the end, gives its whole vast body back to the smallest of all, in the deepest and darkest and quietest room of the sea. Nothing is wasted. The great life simply passes, slowly, into 1,000 smaller ones, far below, in the dark, and the long cycle of the deep turns gently on. Let us turn for a while to the small creatures at the very foundation of the whale's whole existence, the krill, because they are a wonder in their own right. And because to understand the great whale fully, you must come to love the tiny life that makes it possible. A single krill is a small thing, a shrimp-like creature a few centimeters long, pale and almost translucent, with large dark eyes and delicate feathery legs. Held in the hand, it would seem fragile and unremarkable, one small drifting morsel of the sea. But krill are not solitary, and they are not few. They are among the most numerous animals on the entire planet. In the cold, rich seas where they thrive, krill gather in swarms so vast that they are difficult to describe without sounding as though one is exaggerating. Swarms that can stretch for kilometers, that can contain tens of thousands of krill packed into every cubic meter of water, that can hold, in a single great aggregation, millions of tons of living creatures. Taken all together, across all the oceans, the krill are thought to make up one of the greatest masses of any single kind of animal on Earth. The whole towering edifice of the blue whale, the largest creature that has ever lived, rests upon this, upon the almost unimaginable abundance of these small, patient, drifting things. And the krill themselves live a life that echoes, in miniature, the great rhythms of the sea. Each day and night, in many parts of the ocean, the krill take part in a movement so vast that it is, by sheer numbers of creatures, the largest migration on the entire planet. Not a migration across the map, but a migration up and down through the layers of the sea. By day, the krill sink down into the deeper, darker water, away from the light, where they are harder for hunters to see. And each night, as darkness falls over the surface, they rise, countless billions of them, all across the world's oceans, at once climbing up toward the surface waters to feed in the cover of the dark, before sinking down again at dawn. Every night, the greatest movement of life on Earth takes place quietly beneath the waves, as the small creatures of the sea climb toward the surface in their countless billions. And every dawn they descend again. The whale's small prey are themselves great travelers, rising and falling through the dark water with the turning of day and night, on a journey as old and as faithful as the tides. And the krill, in their turn, live on something smaller still. They feed, in great part, on the tiny drifting plants of the sea, the microscopic, sunlit life that floats in the upper water and turns sunlight into living energy. The same tiny plants that, when they bloom in the long days of summer, can turn whole stretches of the ocean green and cloudy with their numbers. These tiny plants are the true foundation of nearly all life in the sea. They catch the sunlight, as the plants of the land do, and out of light and water and the minerals of the sea, they build the first living energy that everything else, in the end, depends upon. The krill graze on them, gathering that captured sunlight into their small bodies, and the whale, gathering the krill by the countless billion, gathers up that sunlight at one further remove into the greatest body in the world. So when you picture the blue whale feeding now, picture the whole of it, the whole bright chain from the sun to the giant. The summer sun pouring down on the cold, rich sea, the tiny plants drinking the light and multiplying until the water turns green, the krill rising each night to graze upon them, gathering in their vast pink swarms, and the great whale moving slowly up through the swarm, mouth opening, gathering the krill and the sunlight they carry into its enormous gentle body. The largest creature in the world is, at the end of that short bright chain, built entirely of captured sunlight caught by the smallest life in the sea, and passed, in just a step or two, up into the greatest life there has ever been. There is a wholeness in that, a kind of quiet rightness, that is good to rest in as you drift. Nothing in the sea stands alone. The giant and the tiny plant are bound together by an unbroken thread of light, and the whale, for all its vastness, is simply the sea's way of gathering a great deal of sunlight into one slow, singing, gentle life. And it is worth knowing, too, that the krill give the sea some of its quiet beauty. Many krill can make their own light. They are among the countless small creatures of the sea that glow, faintly and blue, in the dark water. On certain nights, in certain places, the swarms of krill light up the black sea with a soft blue shimmer, a living glow drifting through the deep, as though a piece of the starlit sky had sunk down into the water. The whale moves through this gentle glow as it feeds in the dark through clouds of softly shining krill, drifting like blue stars in the black water. Picture that, as you lie there, the great dark shape of the whale, gliding slowly through a vast soft cloud of faint blue light, gathering the glowing krill gently into itself. In the deep quiet of the night sea, there are few images in all the world more peaceful or more beautiful than that. Breathe slowly. Let the soft blue glow of the drifting krill and the slow dark shape of the whale moving through it fill the quiet behind your eyes. There is no hurry in the deep. The krill rise and fall with the turning of the night. The whale gathers them gently in, and the whole slow machinery of the living sea turns over, patiently, in the dark, as it has for millions of years, asking nothing of you but that you rest and drift and let it carry you. The blue whale does not travel the oceans alone. It is the greatest of a whole family of giants, the great whales, and it is worth drifting for a while among its kin, for each of them is a wonder, and together they make the seas a place of gentle giants from end to end. Closest to the blue whale in size is the fin whale, the second largest animal that has ever lived, only a little shorter than the blue whale. Long and sleek and fast, sometimes called the greyhound of the sea for the speed and grace with which it moves. The fin whale, too, sings in deep, low voices that carry across the ocean, and like the blue whale, it feeds by lunging through swarms of small creatures and sieving the sea through its baleen. If you saw one, you might at first mistake it for a blue whale. It takes a careful eye to tell the two giants apart. The fin whale carries one curious marking that sets it apart, a strange asymmetry in the color of its jaw, dark on one side and pale on the other, one of those small, quiet puzzles the sea is full of, the reason for which we are still not entirely sure. Then there is the humpback whale, smaller than the blue, but perhaps the most beloved of all the great whales and the most famous singer in the sea. Where the blue whale's song is a deep, far-traveling rumble, the humpback song is something far more elaborate. Long, complex, structured sequences of moans and cries and rising calls, repeated and varied, that can go on for many minutes and be sung over and over for hours. The most remarkable thing about the humpback song is that it is shared and learned. All the males in a population tend to sing the same song at a given time, and that song slowly changes over the seasons, with new patterns spreading from whale to whale across the ocean, so that the song this year is not quite the song of last year. A slow, shared, ever-changing music, passed between the whales and remade by them, something very close to a tradition handed down and reshaped, a culture carried in sound. The humpback is also the great acrobat of the giants, the one most likely to heave its whole enormous body clear of the water and fall back in a great burst of spray, or to lie at the surface and slap the water with its long white flippers, for reasons we do not fully understand, but that look, from a distance, very much like play. There are the right whales, slow and rounded and gentle, who skim along the surface with their mouths open, straining the small creatures from the water as they go. There is the sei whale, and the bride's whale, and the little minke whale, the smallest of this baleen-bearing family, little, though it would still dwarf any boat you are ever likely to stand in. And there is one more cousin, quite different from the rest, that deserves a moment of its own. The sperm whale, the great deep diver, the largest of the toothed whales. The sperm whale does not sieve the sea for krill. It hunts in the deep dark water far below, diving down a kilometer or more into the black to find its prey, including, as we have spoken of on other nights, the giant squid, those great soft creatures of the deep, with whom the sperm whale does silent battle in the lightless water far below, leaving the only record of those encounters in the circular scars its prey's suckers leave upon its skin. The sperm whale holds the deepest, darkest, most mysterious life of all the great whales, plunging into the abyss on a single breath, into a world the blue whale never enters. All of these, the blue, the fin, the humpback, the right whale, the sei, the minke, the sperm whale, and more, are the great whales, the gentle giants of the sea, the largest creatures of our world. They move through every ocean on the planet. They sing across the deep water in voices low and high. They migrate across the whole width of the seas, generation after generation. On roads of water, their kind has followed for longer than there have been people to wonder at them. For most of history, we knew them only as great dark shapes and towering spouts glimpsed from the decks of ships, mysteries, half-legends, the largest things in the world and the least understood. And only in recent times have we begun, slowly and humbly, to learn who they truly are. Not monsters, not myths, but ancient, gentle, intelligent travelers, singing their long songs across the dark water, raising their young with patient care, living their slow, century-long lives in the one great wilderness left on earth that we have never truly tamed. And greatest among them all, the largest of the giants, the topmost note of the whole long music of life, is the one we have followed tonight, the blue whale, moving slowly through the dark beside you, breathing its great slow breaths, singing its long, low song across the whole width of the sea. Let yourself drift among them all now, gently, the great gentle giants of the sea, scattered across all the dark oceans of the world, rising and breathing and singing and sinking, each one moving slowly through its own patch of the wide water under the same night sky. There is no hurry among them. There is no fear in them. There is only the slow, patient company of the largest, gentlest creatures in the world, keeping the night with you. It is worth pausing, as the night grows deep, to wonder how we came to know any of this at all. For everything we have spoken of tonight, the size of the heart, the reach of the song, the slowness of the diving heartbeat, the long roads of the migration is hard-won knowledge, gathered patiently, over many years, about an animal that is extraordinarily difficult to study. And the story of how we came to know the blue whale is itself a quiet wonder, and a lesson in patience that suits the slowness of the night. Think of how hard it is, truly, to study a blue whale. It lives far out in the open ocean, scattered thin across the vast seas. It spends most of its life beneath the surface, out of sight, rising only now and then to breathe. It is far too large to bring into any laboratory, far too powerful to handle, far too wide-ranging to follow easily. You cannot weigh it on any scale. You cannot keep it anywhere. You can only meet it, briefly, on its own terms, out on the open water, when it chooses to rise, and then it is gone again, into the blue. For most of history, this meant the blue whale was almost entirely a mystery, a great shape and a towering spout, glimpsed from a distance, and very little more. Nearly everything we now know has been learned within quite recent times, and every piece of it was difficult. Consider something as simple as the heartbeat. We marveled at that great heart, slowing to 2 beats a minute on a deep dive. How could anyone possibly know such a thing about a wild creature the size of a building, far out in the ocean, deep beneath the surface? The answer is patience, and ingenuity, and gentleness. Scientists devised tags that could be attached, painlessly and only for a little while, to the skin of a whale by means of suction cups, small recording devices that cling to the great animal as it swims and gather information about how deep it goes, how it moves, what sounds it makes and hears, and even, in time, the beating of its heart, before the tag releases on its own and floats to the surface to be collected. To place such a tag, a researcher must approach a wild whale closely and briefly in a small boat, reach out, and set the tag gently on that vast moving flank, a delicate, fleeting, careful meeting between the smallest of observers and the largest of animals. From the handful of recordings gathered this way, painstakingly, over years, we have begun to read the secret inner rhythms of the whale, the slowing heart, the careful spending of breath, the great lunges of the feeding dive. Every number was earned, gently, one brief meeting at a time. Or consider the songs. We know the blue whale's voice travels across whole oceans because, over decades, networks of underwater listening instruments have recorded those low calls and traced them across vast distances. Some of what we know first came, curiously, from instruments that had been placed in the deep ocean for entirely different reasons during the tense decades of the last century to listen for the movements of submarines, and which, in listening to the sea, also caught the long, low voices of the whales rolling through the deep, and so, almost by accident, revealed to us the astonishing reach of the blue whale's song. It was through such patient listening, year after year, that the single high voice of the so-called loneliest whale was first noticed and followed across the Pacific. We have, in effect, learned to eavesdrop on the great slow conversation of the whales, and we are still, even now, only beginning to understand what we are hearing. And consider how we tell one whale from another, across the trackless sea. It turns out that the mottled pattern of pale and dark on a blue whale's skin is unique to each individual, as unique as a fingerprint, as unique as the lines of your own hand. By photographing these patterns, patiently, over years, researchers have learned to recognize individual whales, to know them apart, to follow particular animals across seasons and across decades, to learn where a given whale travels and how long it lives and whether it returns, year after year, to the same waters. There are blue whales alive in the ocean tonight that are known individually to the people who study them, recognized, named, followed across the years, old acquaintances met again and again on the wide water. The greatest anonymous giant of the sea turns out, on close and patient acquaintance, to be a world of individuals, each one slightly different, each one living out its own long particular life. There is a humility in all of this that is worth carrying towards sleep. We share the planet with the largest creature that has ever lived, and yet we have had to work, slowly and patiently and with great care, simply to learn the most basic things about it: how fast its heart beats, how far its voice carries, how long it lives, where it goes. We are still learning. There is a great deal about the blue whale that we still do not know, and may not know for a long time yet. And there is something right about that, something fitting. The largest creature in the world keeps much of itself to itself, far out in the deep water, beyond our easy reach. It does not give up its secrets quickly. It lives at its own slow pace, in its own vast wild place, on its own ancient terms, and it allows us, now and then, briefly, to come close, and to learn a little, and to wonder at the rest. Let that wonder be a soft thing in the dark as you drift. We know so much, and so little. The great whale moves through the night beyond the edge of all our knowing, vast and gentle and mostly unknown, keeping the deep water with you, and there is no need to know it all tonight. There is only the quiet and the slow, far presence of the great creature in the dark, and the long night settling around you. Before we follow the whale any further, let us pause and simply be there for a while, for it helps, in knowing a creature, to share the water with it. So let yourself drift out, gently, in your imagination, onto the open sea at night. Imagine you are floating at the surface of the open ocean, far from any land, on a calm and starlit night. There is no shore in any direction. The water is black and smooth and slow, rising and falling beneath you in long, gentle swells, the way a sleeping chest rises and falls with breath. Above you, the stars are scattered thick across the whole sky, undimmed by any light from the land, and their faint glow lies along the tops of the swells in thin silver lines. The air is cool and clean, and smells of salt. There is no sound but the soft slap and sigh of the water moving against itself, and the slow rhythm of your own breathing. You are a very small thing, floating on the skin of an ocean that is, in places, kilometers deep, and tonight, that thought is not frightening. It is restful. The sea is vast and old and patient, and it is in no hurry at all, and neither, tonight, are you. And then, somewhere out in the dark, not far from you, the surface of the sea breaks open slowly, softly, without violence, and a long dark shape rises into the night air. You do not see all of it. You could not. It is far too long to see at once in the dark. You see a smooth gray-blue back, mottled and pale, breaking the surface and rolling slowly forward, on, longer than you expected, longer than seems possible, as though the sea itself were quietly turning over. And then comes the breath, a deep, vast exhalation, a column of warm mist blasting up into the cold night air, rising higher than a house, catching the faint starlight as it hangs there and drifts. The sound of it reaches you a moment later, a long, low, resonant whoosh, the most enormous sigh you have ever heard. And then, after a pause, the slow drawing in of the next breath. And then the great dark back rolls forward once more and slips, without a splash, back beneath the surface and is gone, leaving only the slowly settling mist and the widening rings on the black water. You have just shared the night with the largest creature that has ever lived, and it has taken no notice of you at all. It has simply risen to breathe, as it has done all its long life, as its kind has done for millions of years, and slipped back down into the dark to go on about its slow and ancient business beneath the waves. Stay with that image as you drift, the great calm back, rolling forever forward in the starlight, the vast warm sigh of the breath, the gentle return to the deep. There is nothing here to fear. There is only the largest, slowest, gentlest heartbeat in the world, moving quietly through the dark water beside you, keeping you company through the night. Let your own breathing fall into rhythm with it. The slow rise, the long, soft sigh, the slow return. There is no hurry in the deep. There is no hurry anywhere out here, on the wide night sea, where the great whales move. Let us spend the deep part of the night now in the gentlest way of all, by simply following one whale, in our imagination, through the slow turning of a single year of her long life. Let go of facts and numbers for a while. Let us just drift alongside her, through the seasons, and let the rhythm of her year carry you down towards sleep. Imagine her in the high summer, in the cold, rich waters near the far south of the world, where the sun barely sets and the long light pours down on the sea for week after week. This is her feeding ground, the place she has returned to summer after summer for the decades of her life. The cold water here is alive, green and cloudy with the blooming of the tiny plants, and thick, in places, with the great pink swarms of krill, and so she feeds. Day after day, through the endless light, she moves slowly through the swarms, opening her great mouth, gathering the krill, sieving the cold sea back out through her baleen, swallowing, turning, and gathering again. She is laying down the deep reserves of energy that will have to carry her through all the leaner months ahead. There is no urgency in it, only steady, patient abundance. The long, bright days, the rich, cold water, the endless gathering of the sea's small gifts. She grows sleek and strong and heavy with the summer's feeding. And at night, such night as there is, in that land of the long day, she rests at the surface, rising and breathing slowly under the pale sky, gathering her strength for the great journey that is coming. Then, slowly, the season turns. The long light begins, at last, to fail. The days shorten, the cold deepens, and something ancient stirs in her, some deep sense that it is time to go. And so she turns away from the rich southern water and points her great body toward the warmer seas far to the north, and begins the long migration, one of the longest journeys made by any creature on Earth. Imagine drifting beside her now, through the autumn, as she crosses the open ocean. There is no land in any direction, only the wide gray water and the wide gray sky, and the slow, tireless beat of her great tail carrying her on, day after day, week after week. She does not hurry. She moves at her steady, patient, unhurried cruise, crossing thousands of kilometers of empty sea, navigating by senses we do not fully understand toward waters she has never forgotten. She rises to breathe. She sinks to glide. She goes on, across the curve of the world, alone on the vast water under the wheeling stars. And as the weeks pass and the water slowly warms, she comes at last to the gentler seas near the equator, the calm, warm, quiet waters where she will spend the winter, and where, this year, something wonderful is going to happen, for she is carrying a calf, grown within her through the long migration, and now, in the warm, safe water far from the cold and the storms, she gives birth. Imagine it, gently. In the warm blue water, the newborn whale slips into the world already 7 meters long, already a creature the size of a small bus, already one of the largest animals in the entire sea on the very first moment of its life. And the mother nudges it gently to the surface to take its first breath. And from that moment, the two of them are inseparable. The calf swims close beside her, in the shelter of her great body, and she nurses it on her thick, rich milk, and it begins, at once, to grow by the weight of a grown person every day, swelling and strengthening in the warm winter water, while she, feeding little in these lean southern seas, pours her own stored summer strength into her young. Drift beside the two of them now, through the warm, quiet winter. There is little to do here but rest and grow and keep close. The water is warm and calm and blue. The mother moves slowly, patiently, her calf always at her side, the two of them rising together to breathe, sinking together to rest, the small one though it grows less small every day, always in the gentle shadow of the large. There is no hurry. There is no fear. There is only the warm water and the slow days, and the deep, quiet bond between the mother and her young, the largest mother and the largest baby in the world, keeping each other close in the warm winter sea. And then, as the year turns once more, and the calf grows strong enough for the journey, the long road calls her again back the way she came, back toward the cold, rich southern water and the summer swarms of krill, with her calf now swimming strongly at her side. And so the great circle closes and begins again. The long migration north to south and south to north, the summer of feeding and the winter of warmth, the endless slow turning of her life across the seasons and the seas. She will do this year after year. For decades she has done it, for decades already, crossing and recrossing the wide oceans, feeding and migrating and singing and raising her young, on, through a life longer than your own, at a pace utterly unhurried, in a wilderness wider than we can imagine. That is the shape of her year and the shape of her life. The long, slow circle of the seasons, traced out across the whole width of the sea by the largest, gentlest, most patient creature in the world. There is no hurry anywhere in it. There is no fear in it. There is only the turning of the year and the crossing of the water, and the slow, faithful rhythm of a great life lived entirely at the pace of the sea. Let yourself rest now in that slow turning. Let the seasons drift past you, the bright summer, the long migration, the warm, quiet winter, the long road home as gently as breath. There is nowhere you need to be. There is nothing you need to do. There is only the slow circle of the whale's year, turning quietly in the dark, and the long night settling deeper around you, and the great gentle creature moving on, unhurried, through the wide and patient sea. There is one more part of the whale's world worth drifting through before the night closes over us, the places where the sea itself comes alive, the rich waters that make the whole great life of the whale possible. For the ocean is not the same everywhere. Much of it, in truth, is a kind of blue desert, vast stretches of warm, clear, beautiful water where very little lives, where the surface is empty and the food is scarce. The blue whale does not linger in those places. It crosses them, on its long migrations, the way a traveler crosses a desert steadily, patiently, without stopping. What the whale seeks, and what it returns to year after year, are the few special places where the sea grows rich and crowded with life. And understanding those places is understanding the deep machinery that feeds the greatest creature in the world. Why is some of the ocean so empty, and some of it so full? The answer lies in the tiny drifting plants we have spoken of, the microscopic life that catches the sunlight and forms the foundation of nearly everything. Those tiny plants need two things to flourish: sunlight, which they find easily enough near the surface, and nutrients, the mineral nourishment of the sea. And here is the difficulty. In much of the ocean, the surface water and the deep water do not mix. The nutrients sink, over time, down into the deep, settling away from the sunlit surface where the tiny plants live, and so the bright surface water, full of light, runs slowly out of nourishment and becomes a desert, clear and warm and nearly empty. The richness of the sea sinks away into the dark below, out of reach of the light, and the surface goes hungry. But in certain special places, the deep water rises, along certain coasts and around the cold poles, and where great currents collide, the cold, dark, nutrient-rich water from below is drawn up toward the surface, welling up out of the deep, carrying all its stored nourishment up into the sunlit zone, where the light is waiting. And where that happens, the sea explodes into life. The tiny plants, given both light and nourishment at last, bloom in their countless billions, turning the water green and cloudy. The krill swarm to graze upon them, gathering in their vast pink clouds, and the whales come from across whole oceans. The great whales come, drawn to these few rich places where the deep has risen and the sea has bloomed, to feed in the brief abundance. These upwellings, these places where the cold, deep water climbs into the light, are the great gathering grounds of the giants. The cold, productive seas near the poles, the rich cold currents along certain coasts, the few crowded oases scattered across the wide blue desert of the open ocean. There is a beautiful circularity in this, worth resting in as you drift. We saw, earlier in the night, how a whale at the end of its life sinks down into the deep and feeds the dark world below, how the richness of the surface rains down, always, into the depths. And here we see the other half of the circle, how, in these special places, the deep rises back up, carrying its stored richness into the light, to feed the blooms and the krill and the whales once more. The sea is always turning over, slowly, in this great vertical circle, the richness sinking into the dark, and rising again into the light, and sinking once more, and the whale rides that circle, following the upwellings, feeding where the deep has risen, sinking, at the last, to feed the deep in its turn. Nothing is still. Nothing is wasted. The whole ocean breathes, slowly, in and out, up and down, across the ages, and the great whale lives its whole life within that slow breathing of the sea. So when you picture the whale in its rich feeding ground now, picture the whole of it. The cold, deep water rising up out of the dark, heavy with the nourishment of ages. The sunlight pouring down to meet it, the sea blooming green in the long summer light, the krill swarming thick in their countless billions, and the great whales gathering from across the ocean to move slowly through that abundance, gathering it gently in. These are among the richest, most crowded, most alive places on the whole planet, and they exist because, in these few special spots, the deep and the light have found each other, and the sea has woken up. Let that quiet wonder settle into you, that the greatest life in the world is fed, in the end, by the slow rising of the deep into the light, in a handful of rich blue oases scattered across the wide and patient sea. And let us follow, too, the long arc of a single life, from its swift beginning to its slow great length, for we have seen the calf born and nursed, but we have not yet followed it onward, into the long decades of the life that waits for it. After a year or so at its mother's side, the young whale is weaned. The rich milk ends, the close, constant companionship of the mother gently loosens, and the young whale, now grown to a great size in its own right, begins to make its own way through the sea. This is a tender and uncertain passage in any life, and we know less than we would like about how the young whale fares in these first independent years where it goes, how it learns the long migration routes, how it comes to know the rich feeding grounds and the warm winter waters. Much of this it must carry within it, some deep inherited sense of the shape of its world, guiding it along roads it has traveled only once, at its mother's side. And somehow it manages. Somehow the young whale finds its way, year by year, into the full rhythm of the whale's life, the summer feeding, the long migration, the winter waters, learning the great slow circle of the year and settling into it, as its kind has done for millions of years. And then, if it is fortunate, the years stretch out before it many, many years. The young whale grows slowly now, after the swift growth of its infancy, filling out toward its full, enormous size over a decade or more. It crosses and recrosses the oceans. It learns the rich places and the empty ones. In time, it takes its own part in the great low conversation of the whales, sending its own voice out across the dark water and hearing the voices of others roll in from far away. The females, in their turn, will one day carry and bear and nurse their own calves in the warm winter seas, as their mothers did before them, pouring their own great strength into the next generation of giants, and so passing the long, slow life of the whale onward, down the ages. A blue whale's life, we said, can stretch to 80 or 90 years, and perhaps beyond 100. Sit with that length of time for a moment, as you drift. A whale alive in the ocean tonight may have been born long before you, or may have been crossing these same waters, singing these same low songs, gathering these same krill for the whole length of your life and more. It may have been alive and swimming and singing through events you think of as history, and it may go on, crossing the wide oceans, long after this night and this year are forgotten for decades more, perhaps, into a future neither of us will see. These are not brief, flickering lives like the lives of so many small creatures. They are long, slow, patient existences, measured out in decades, in a creature that does nothing in haste and has, it seems, all the time in the world. There is a deep steadiness in that, a deep calm, that is good to rest against in the dark. The great whale is in no hurry to live its life, because its life is so long. It moves through its decades the way it moves through the water, slowly, patiently, gracefully, with no sense that anything need be rushed. And for one night, you are invited to borrow that steadiness, and to feel, against the long, slow life of the whale, how gently time can pass, and how little any of the day's small hurries truly matter. Out here on the wide and patient sea, let your breathing slow once more. There is no hurry in the deep, and no hurry in the long life of the whale, and no hurry anywhere in the quiet dark around you. We are nearly at the end of our long night together now, and there is nothing left ahead of us but rest. There is one last small wonder to notice before we let the night close over us, and it is this: that the great whale is not only a creature, but a world, a moving world, carrying upon it and around it a whole small community of other living things, traveling with it across the oceans. Look closely, in your imagination, at the skin of the blue whale as it glides through the water. It is not bare and smooth everywhere. Here and there it carries passengers. There are barnacles, small hard creatures that fix themselves to the whale's skin, especially around the head and the fins, and ride along with it for their whole lives, filtering tiny food from the water as the whale carries them across the sea. They have found, in the great slow whale, a moving home that never stops traveling through rich water. There are whale lice, small, pale, crawling creatures, distant relatives of the krill the whale feeds on, that live among the folds and crevices of its skin and across much of its body, especially after a long season in the cold polar seas. The whale's pale underside can take on a faint yellowish sheen, a thin living film of countless microscopic plants, diatoms, that settle and grow on its skin in the cold, rich water. It was this faint yellow film, in fact, that long ago gave the blue whale one of its old names, the sulfur-bottom whale, named for the pale sulfur, yellow tint of its belly, painted there by a film of tiny living plants gathered in the cold southern seas. So the whale travels not alone, but accompanied a great slow world moving through the ocean, carrying its barnacles and its lice and its faint film of tiny plants, and often, too, a loose company of small fish swimming alongside in its shelter, and seabirds wheeling above its spout, and all the small life that gathers wherever something large and slow moves through the sea. The blue whale is the largest single creature in the world, and yet it is also a kind of traveling island, a moving habitat, a world unto itself, bearing its small passengers gently across the wide ocean, asking nothing of them, simply carrying them along on its long, slow journeys through the deep. There is something quietly lovely in that even the most solitary giant of the sea is never truly alone, but moves always in the company of smaller life. A whole little world riding upon the great one, across the dark water, through the long years. And then there is the breath, the moment when the whale rises, and surfaces, and breathes, which is the one moment we are most likely ever to share with it, and which is worth dwelling on, gently, as a thing of quiet beauty. For most of its life, the whale is hidden, down in the blue, out of our sight, but every so often it must rise, and break the surface, and breathe. And in that moment, for a few seconds, the largest creature in the world reveals itself to the air and the light. Imagine you are there for it, at dawn, on a calm sea. First, perhaps, you sense it before you see it, a stillness, a gathering, some change in the water, and then the surface swells and parts, and the great dark back rises, smooth and vast, rolling slowly into the morning air. And then comes the breath, the explosive exhalation, the column of warm misted air blasting upward, rising higher than a house, hanging in the still air and catching the early light, and the deep resonant sound of it reaching you a moment later, the most enormous sigh in the world. The whale holds at the surface for a few breaths, the great back rolling slowly forward, the spout rising again and again, and then, at the last, the back arches, and the small fin upon it dips below, and if you are fortunate, the great tail, the flukes, lifts slowly clear of the water, streaming, held for a moment against the sky, before it slides down without a splash and is gone, leaving only the spreading rings and the slowly settling mist. And the sea is empty again, and calm, as though nothing had happened at all, and yet you know, now, that just beneath that calm surface, the largest creature in the world is gliding down into the blue on a single great breath, to go on about its slow and ancient life in the deep. That is the gift the whale gives us, on the rare occasions it chooses to. A few seconds, at the surface, in which the greatest of all living things lifts itself into the light and breathes, and lets us see it, and then returns to the deep. Most people never receive that gift, but you can hold it now, in your imagination, as a thing of quiet beauty to carry down toward sleep, the great dark back rolling in the dawn light, the warm breath rising and hanging in the still air, the slow lift of the great tail against the sky, and the gentle, silent return to the deep. There is no hurry in it. There is no fear in it. There is only the slow grace of the largest, gentlest creature in the world, rising to breathe in the morning light and slipping quietly back into the patient sea. Before we let go of the waking world entirely, let us hold, for one quiet moment, the strangest and simplest wonder of all, the one we began with, all those hours ago, at the very start of the night. The largest creature that has ever lived is alive right now. Not in the deep past, with the great dinosaurs, long turned to stone. Not in some far future we will never see. Now, tonight, in this very moment, as you lie here in the dark, the single greatest living thing that the 4 billion-year story of life on Earth has ever produced is out there, breathing, in the wide black water, under the same turning stars that are above your roof. You and the largest creature in the history of the world are alive at the same time, on the same small planet, beneath the same sky. Of all the countless ages of the Earth, of all the long stretches of time in which there was no blue whale and will one day be no blue whale again, you happen to be alive in the brief span when the greatest of all creatures shares the world with you. There is something quietly staggering in that, when you let yourself feel it. We so easily imagine that the great wonders are all elsewhere in the distant past, in far-off space, in places we can never reach. And all the while, the single largest living wonder in the entire history of the planet is here, now, with us, swimming slowly through our own ocean, breathing our own air at the surface, singing its long, low song through our own dark water. Most of us will never see it, but it is there. It is real. It is alive tonight. And simply to know that, to lie here in the dark and know that the greatest creature that has ever lived is out there in the night sea, breathing slowly under the same stars, is a kind of quiet companionship, a kind of gentle wonder that can carry you softly down towards sleep. You are not alone tonight. None of us are, while the great whales still cross the dark water. Out there, beyond the edge of the land, beyond the reach of the streetlights and the noise and the hurry, the largest, gentlest, most patient creatures in the world are moving slowly through the deep, breathing, singing, keeping the vast night sea as they have kept it for millions of years. And tonight, in your imagination, you have drifted out among them and learned their secrets and shared their slow calm, and you can carry that calm down into sleep with you now and let it hold you through the dark. So let us stay here now, in the dark, on the wide, quiet sea, and let everything grow slow. The night is deep, the water is calm, and somewhere out there in the dark, not far from you, the great whale moves, slowly, through the black water, the largest, gentlest creature that has ever lived, keeping you company through the night. You cannot see it now. You do not need to. You can simply feel it there. The vast, slow presence in the dark, rising now and then to breathe. That long, warm sigh drifting across the water. And then the slow sinking down again, and the deep, unhurried quiet. Let your breathing fall into rhythm with it. The slow rise toward the surface. The long, soft breath out into the night. The slow return to the deep. Breathe in, slowly, like the whale rising. Breathe out, slowly, like its long, warm sigh. There is no hurry in it. There is no effort in it. Only the slow, deep, patient rhythm of the largest breath in the world, and your own breath, slowing to match it, here in the quiet dark. And feel, far off in the black water, the slow beat of that great heart, the largest heart that has ever beaten, slowing now, as the whale sinks into the deep, to its long, quiet, diving rhythm, one vast, deep, unhurried beat, and then a long, long pause, and then another, the slowest great heartbeat in all the world, marking out the deep, calm minutes of the night. Let your own heart settle toward that slowness. Let everything in you grow slow and deep and unhurried, like the whale gliding down through the dark water on a single patient breath. There is nothing you need to do tonight. There is nowhere you need to be. The great question is answered. The long journey is done. There is nothing left to wonder about, nothing left to solve. You have drifted out, tonight, onto the wide, dark sea, and met the largest creature that has ever lived, and learned its secrets, and followed it through the seasons of its long, slow life. And now there is only the resting, and the drifting, and the quiet. Let the wide sea hold you. The water is calm on every side, rising and falling in long, slow swells beneath you, rocking you as gently as the whale is rocked, as gently as a cradle. There is nothing beneath you but the deep, patient water, kilometers deep, holding the whole weight of the night with ease. There is nothing above you but the scattered stars and the soft, dark sky. And there is nothing you must carry, nothing you must hold, nothing you must keep watch over. The sea is holding all of it. The sea is holding you. Let yourself be held. Let the cares of the day drift away from you now, out across the dark water, the way the whale's warm breath drifts and fades into the night air. Each small worry, each lingering thought, each bright, sharp edge of the waking world, let it lift gently away and drift off across the wide sea and fade and be gone. There is no room for any of it out here. There is only the calm water and the slow swells and the great gentle presence in the dark and the long, quiet night. The waking world is far away now, back on the distant land, and it cannot follow you out here onto the wide and peaceful sea. And let the whale's slow company carry you down towards sleep. Picture it once more, gently, out there in the dark, the great calm back, rolling slowly forward in the faint starlight, the long warm sigh of the breath, rising and drifting, the slow sinking down again into the deep, the largest, gentlest, most patient creature in the world, moving quietly through the night beside you, in no hurry at all, asking nothing of you, simply keeping you company through the dark. There is nothing to fear in it. There is only the slow grace of it, the deep calm of it, the gentle, endless patience of it, drawing you down, breath by slow breath, towards sleep. The largest life that has ever existed, and tonight, it is here, in the dark, with you. Out of all the vast and empty ocean, it has risen near you, to share the night, and it is at peace. It feeds gently on the small drifting things of the sea. It sings its long, low song across the wide water. It crosses the whole world at the pace of a slow walk. It lives, unhurried, for the better part of a century, and harms nothing, and fears nothing, and moves through the great dark sea entirely at home. Let its peace become your peace now. Let its slowness become your slowness. Let its great calm heart, beating once in the long quiet, Draw your own heart down into the same deep stillness here at the end of the long night. There is no hurry in the deep. There is no hurry anywhere out here, on the wide and patient sea. Let go of the last of the day. Let your breathing slow and slow and slow, and let the great gentle wail carry you down, softly, into sleep. And as you drift here, on the edge of sleep, let your mind widen for a moment, gently, beyond the single whale beside you, out across the whole dark ocean, and all the great creatures moving through it tonight. For your whale is not alone in the world. All across the planet, this very night, the great whales are moving through the dark water, in the cold southern seas and the cold northern ones, in the wide Pacific and the deep Atlantic and the warm Indian Ocean. Scattered across all the dark oceans of the world, the blue whales and the fin whales and the humpbacks and all their kin are rising to breathe under the stars and sinking to glide through the deep and singing their long, low songs across the water. At this very moment, as you lie here in the quiet dark, somewhere a great whale is breathing out a column of warm mist into the night air. Somewhere a mother is drifting slowly beside her calf in the warm winter water. Somewhere a long, low song is rolling out through the Black Sea. On and on, for hundreds of kilometers, carrying its quiet message across the deep. The whole ocean, all around the world, is alive tonight with the slow movement and the deep voices of the great gentle giants. You are not keeping the night alone. The whole wide sea is keeping it with you. And these are ancient creatures, moving to an ancient rhythm. The blue whale we have followed tonight is the latest of a long, long line, a line that reaches back across millions of years, far beyond the whole span of human history, beyond the first cities, beyond the first people, into the deep past of the world. For millions of years before there was anyone to hear them, the great whales were already crossing these same oceans, already singing their long, low songs into the deep, already raising their enormous calves in the warm winter seas and gathering the krill in the cold summer water. The slow migrations they make tonight are the same migrations their kind has made for ages beyond counting. The songs they sing tonight roll through the same deep water that has carried such songs since long before our kind existed. When you listen, in your imagination, to the long, low voice of the whale rolling through the dark, you are listening to one of the oldest sounds in the living world, a sound that filled these oceans for millions of years before the first human being was born, and that will, we may hope, fill them for ages after we are gone. There is a deep peace in that, a peace that comes from feeling how small and brief our own hurried lives are against the long, slow patience of the sea and its great creatures. The whale does not know our calendars, our clocks, our deadlines, our cares. It knows only the turning of the seasons and the slow pulse of the ocean. It lives at the pace of the tides and the migrations, a pace set not in minutes but in months and years and decades, a pace that has not changed in millions of years and is in no hurry to change now. And for one night, you are invited to set down your own hurried pace, and to borrow the whales to let your sense of time loosen and slow and stretch out until the urgent ticking of the day falls silent, and there is only the long, slow rhythm of breath and tide and the patient turning of the dark. There is nothing you must do quickly tonight. There is nothing the night is waiting for. There is only the slow, deep peace of the ancient sea and the great gentle creatures moving through it, exactly as they have for longer than we can imagine, exactly as they will long after this night is forgotten. So let the long slowness of the whale settle all the way into you now. Let your breathing be slow, like the whale rising and sighing in the dark. Let your heart be slow, like the great heart beating once in the long quiet of the dive. Let your thoughts be slow, and few, and far apart, drifting like the slow swells across the wide dark water. There is no hurry in the deep. There has never been any hurry in the deep. There is only the patient, ancient, gentle turning of the sea, and the great quiet creatures keeping the night, and you, drifting softly down among them, toward sleep. You are held by the wide calm water. You are kept by the great gentle giants. You are carried, slowly, on the long, slow breath of the sea. And there is nothing left to do now but let go, the last small distance, into the deep and peaceful dark. There is nothing more you need to know tonight. There is nothing more to learn, nothing more to wonder about, nothing more to hold. We have come a long way out together, onto the wide dark sea, and met the largest creature that has ever lived, and learned its gentle secrets. And there is nothing left now but to rest here, in the quiet, in the company of the great whale, for as long as you like, and to let sleep come, as slowly and as surely as the tide. Let the dark be soft around you, not an empty dark, not a frightening one, the warm, living dark of the night sea, full of slow movement and deep, far voices, full of the great, gentle creatures crossing the water under the stars, the kind of dark that holds you, rather than hides things from you, the kind of dark the whale lives in always, and moves through with perfect ease, and is perfectly at home in. Let it hold you the way it holds the whale. Let it carry you the way the water carries the whale. There is nothing in it to fear. There is only the soft-sounding dark, and the slow swells, and the great quiet presence keeping the night with you. Feel how completely you are held. The wide sea is beneath you and around you, holding the whole weight of you with ease, rocking you gently in the long, slow swells, the way it rocks the great whale, the way it has rocked the sleeping creatures of the sea for millions of years. You do not have to hold yourself up. You do not have to hold anything at all. The water is holding you now. Let every muscle soften and let go. Let your whole weight settle down into the gentle rocking of the sea, and be carried, and be held. And let your breathing go on slowing, all on its own, slow and deep and easy, like the long, slow breath of the whale. Breathe in, slowly, like the great creature rising to the surface in the dark, and breathe out, slowly, like its long, warm sigh drifting away across the water. Each breath a little slower than the last, each breath a little deeper, each breath carrying you a little further down towards sleep. There is nothing to do but breathe and drift and let the slow rhythm of the sea carry you down. Far away now, the cares of the day are fading. The bright, loud, hurried world, with all its clocks and its tasks and its small, sharp worries, is back on the distant land, and it cannot reach you out here. None of it can follow you across all this dark water to the quiet place where you are drifting now. There is only the calm sea and the slow swells and the great gentle whale moving softly through the dark and the long, peaceful night holding you. Let the whale's slow company draw you down. Picture it one last time, gently. Out there in the dark, the great calm back rolling slowly forward in the faint starlight. The long, warm sigh of the breath rising and drifting and fading. The slow, soundless sinking down again into the deep, the largest, gentlest, most patient creature that has ever lived, moving quietly through the night beside you, in no hurry at all, keeping you company through the dark, drawing you down with it, breath by slow breath, towards sleep. And let that great slow heart, beating once in the long quiet of the deep, be the last thing you feel as you drift off one vast, deep, unhurried beat, far down in the dark water, and then a long, peaceful pause, and then, softly, another. The slowest, largest, gentlest heartbeat in all the world, beating slowly on through the night, while you let go of the last of your waking thoughts and sink, softly and without fear, down into the deep and dreamless dark. There is no bottom to reach tonight, and no shore to swim for. There is no further you need to go, nothing more you need to find, nowhere you need to be. There is only this. The wide, calm water, the soft, dark night, the slow swells rocking you gently, the great whale moving quietly through the deep, and you, held safely on the surface of the sleeping sea, drifting slowly down into rest. And now, as the night draws toward its close, let us gather the whole of it together, gently, and answer at last the question we set ourselves at the very beginning. Why is the blue whale the largest creature that has ever lived, and why will nothing ever grow larger? We have by now gathered all the pieces of the answer, and we need only set them side by side. The first is the sea itself. Only in water, held up everywhere by the gentle lift of the ocean, can a body grow so vast without being crushed under its own weight. The same body that on dry land could not so much as draw breath. That is why the greatest of all creatures is a creature of the sea, and could never have been anything else. But the water alone is not enough, or the seas would be full of things larger still. The second piece is food. A body that large must be fed, enormously, and can only be fed by gathering the small, dense swarms of krill in great engulfing gulps which ties the whale, for all its size, to the few rich corners of the ocean where that food blooms. And the third piece is the body's own quiet limit. A heart, a circulation, a way of carrying oxygen that can serve a creature of this size, but could not serve one very much greater. Grow much larger than a blue whale, and you would need more food than even the richest sea could ever provide. Push through a heart straining at the very edge of what a heart can do. So the blue whale sits, not by accident, at a kind of ceiling the largest that the sea and the krill and the beating of a living heart will together allow. It is not merely big, it is as big as life on this planet has ever found a way to be. And it is here, now, tonight, sharing the world with you, the largest life that has ever existed, and one of the least seen, moving slowly through the dark water under the same stars, breathing its long, slow breaths, while you lie here and drift toward sleep. So let go now, the last small distance. Let the waking world fade, softly, the way the whale's warm breath fades into the night air. Let your thoughts grow slow and few and far apart, and then let them go altogether, drifting off across the dark water like the last faint mist of a breath. Let your breathing slow to the slow, deep rhythm of the sea. Let the great, gentle whale and the wide, calm water and the long, patient night carry you down, softly and without fear, into sleep. Rest now. There is nothing left to do. The journey is over. The sea is calm, and you are held by the wide, patient water, kept by the great, gentle giants, carried on the long, slow breath of the sleeping sea. The whales will go on crossing the dark water without you tonight. Their long, low songs will go on rolling through the deep, from sea to sea, all through the night and into the morning. The great, slow hearts will go on beating, far down in the quiet water, whether or not you are awake to feel them. The wide, ancient ocean will go on holding its great, gentle creatures, and holding you, in its slow and patient calm, all through the long night and into the light of morning, whether or not you ever know it. So you can let go of your watch at last. You can set it all down, softly, and rest. There is nothing to hold, nothing to solve, nothing to fear. There is only the wide, dark, gentle sea, holding you close, and the slow company of the great whale in the dark, and the long, slow, peaceful breath of the night. Rest now. The great whale is keeping the deep, the wide sea is keeping you, and the night will keep them both, in its slow and ancient calm, until morning. Sleep well, and drift gently down, on the long, slow breath of the sea, into the deep and peaceful dark where the largest, gentlest creature that has ever lived moves quietly through the night, and the wide ocean holds you softly and keeps you until the light returns.